We have an exciting new presidium. Ernie Agustin is here from California, and Ernie will have the pleasure of introducing Rabbi Doron Perez. Rabbi Perez is the chair or the executive director of our World Movement. Our World Movement consists, as you'll see in a film in a few minutes as well, for organizations like Amuna, Amit, B'nai Akiva, all have come together, and we have a very important umbrella organization in Israel, which today has taken on a very important leadership role. Ernie Agustin is a Talmud Chacham and a physician in Los Angeles. He lives in Hancock Park. His son today heads and plays a very important role in ensuring the continuation of Mizrachi and religious Zionism in California. I'd like to call on Ernie to make the introduction for Rabbi Perez.
Bershus the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbanim, Chaverim, ladies and gentlemen. It's a distinct pleasure and a kavod to me to be asked to serve and to be elected to this presidium, a national organization. I just flew in from Los Angeles. We have many people from Chicago. We have all the people from the metropolitan area around New York. This truly is an American Mizrachi movement. Growing up in Los Angeles at the feet of Rabbi Dolgan from Chicago, Simon Dolgan, who planted the flag of religious Zionism in Los Angeles and created Camp Moshava, where the ideals of religious Zionism flourished in California. And the RZLA, the Religious Zionists of Los Angeles, has also been quite active in the last 20 years with Malava Malkas and Onik Shabbases and bringing in scholars and residents like Rav Schechter and others, Rosh Yeshivas throughout the world who represent religious Zionism. We are very excited to partner with Chicago, New York, with Rabbi Shlush in the future development of Mizrachi in America. In introducing Rabbi Perez, I would like to say the following. I bring greetings from Los Angeles. We had Rabbi Beryl Wine as a scholar in residence just yesterday. I'd like to tell you in introduction of Rabbi Perez the following story I heard from him maybe 12 hours ago. He said he was an 11-year-old boy in 1945. His father was a Rav. And the chief rabbi, Rav Yitzhak Halevi Herzog, was visiting Chicago. Rabbi Herzog was an enormous Gaon from Lita, who was chief rabbi of Dublin with an Irish brogue, but was now chief rabbi of the state of Israel following Rav Kook. And he came to Chicago to visit. And Rabbi Wine remembers that as an 11-year-old boy going to the airport to see it. You could still go to the plane and see somebody come off the plane at that time and see Rav Herzog with a top hat with a long flowing beard coming down and greeting the Jewish community of Chicago. And they went to the yeshiva. He said there were about 200 Bachram from the ages of 11 to 25 in Chicago listening to Rav Herzog. And at one point, Rav Herzog put his head down and wept bitterly. And he picked his head up and he said he had just come back from the Pope in 1945 after the Shoah with a list of 10,000 Jewish boys and girls who had been hidden in a convent, hidden in convents during the Shoah to be saved. And he had gone to the Pope with a list to get them out. And the Pope said, there's nothing I can do. They've been baptized, or we cannot release them to another faith. And this is why Rav Herzog was weeping bitterly. But then Rabbi Wine describes he roused himself like a lion. And he looked at everybody in the room and said, what are you going to do for the Jewish people? Each one of you. Because he knew that these 10,000 that were lost and the millions that were lost have to be replaced by each and every Jew thinking not just about their own personal issues, but going beyond it and thinking about Klal Yisrael and thinking about Medinas Yisrael and the state of Israel, etc. I say this in introduction to Rav Perez because Rabbi Doron Perez, I happen to have gotten very close with Rabbi Perez in his visit to Los Angeles just a few months ago at Yom Yerushalayim, where we had events in 5 different shuls and hundreds of Los Angelinos participated with 5 other Rabbanim that Rabbi Perez brought from Israel to Los Angeles. We placed them in multiple shuls, and we heard Torahs, Eretz Yisrael about Yerushalayim. And Rabbi Perez roused the community in his fantastic method. And he is somebody who, in his efforts in South Africa, leading the community, the Mizrachi community, understood this concept that what am I going to do for the Jewish people? And Rabbi Perez now is really doing for the Jewish people as head of World Mizrachi. We already have many Rabbonim in Los Angeles who have signed up to bring their whole kehilot, or as many people as can come, to the 50th anniversary of Yom Yerushalayim. And this is hopefully going to galvanize in this community as well, and in Chicago, etc. So we'll have thousands and thousands of people coming to visit Yerushalayim on its 50th anniversary after its reunification. All of us should have that same goal of what can we do for the Jewish people through the RZA and through the efforts of Mizrachi. So it is my pleasure to introduce Rav Doron Perez, so we all will get a flavor of that type of individual who can inspire us. Let us see a brief video which will describe a little bit about the efforts of World Mizrachi before we hear from Rav Perez himself. Thank you.
There is a religious Zionist awakening taking place throughout Israel. You can see it in every sphere of life. In the IDF, more than half of the officers are now wearing kippot, and never before have there been so many religious officers holding the highest ranks of the army. Religious Zionist pioneers saw it as a national imperative to settle the land of Israel, and the results of their motivation, self-sacrifice, and ideology can be felt not only in the settlements of Judea and Samaria, but in Ayarot Pituach, development cities all over the periphery of Israel, illuminating and uplifting some of the most challenged in Israeli society. The school system and public service across the country are all being infused and inspired with the spirit of religious Zionism. In the Knesset, there have never been so many knitted kippot in such powerful positions of influence, and the religious Zionist party, the Bayit Yehudi, has transformed itself, opening its doors to Jews of all backgrounds who identify with the values of our movement. This inclusive and powerful message of Torat Eretz Yisrael is catching on like wildfire across the country, and we believe that it is high time to bring this message to the global Jewish community in the broadest and most impactful way. The re-energized World Mizrachi movement, led by the new CEO, Rav Doron Perez, is taking the message of Ki Mitzion Tetzeh Torah to the next level. Our affiliates, World Bnei Akiva, Torah Mitzion, Soul Train, and Manigut Toranit of Kolel Eretz Chemda, along with our partners, the World Zionist Organization, Bat Ami, Mechon Amiel Strauss, and Lavi Olami, each add their unique light, together forming the flame of religious Zionism, which is spreading across the globe. World Mizrachi rabbis Doron Perez and Jeremy Gimpel have traveled across America and Canada, the UK, South Africa, and Australia to strengthen and revitalize our branches. In Great Britain, World Mizrachi was instrumental in re-establishing a new Mizrachi UK based in London, already having a major impact on UK Jewry. In Israel, Mizrachi is hosting many Shlichut conferences, raising the profile of Shlichut across the country, enlisting major Rabbanim, Yeshivot, and Midrashot to the cause. Mizrachi is bringing Shlichut to the forefront of Jewish consciousness in Israel for the next generation. With the call of Tzav HaSha'ah, Mizrachi has hosted hundreds of potential Shlichim and already seen a major rise in appropriate candidates for Shlichut around the world. World Mizrachi is disseminating inspiring and relevant educational content across the Jewish world. One amazing example has been our partnership with Koren Publishers in publishing the first ever Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim Machzor in the English language, including profound commentaries and articles from some of the Jewish world's leading religious thinkers. This Koren Mizrachi publication was an immediate bestseller, adding deep spiritual appreciation to the critical role of the State of Israel in Jewish destiny today. Raising the bar in leadership development, World Mizrachi is revolutionizing recruitment of the next generation of global rabbinic and educational leaders to serve diaspora Jewry. Through pinpoint searches in Israel and unique partnerships with local diaspora communities, we have built a cadre of young and powerful educators, all fluent in English and ready to serve and to lead. Under the directorship of Rav Hillel Van Leeuwen, Shalhevet already has over 25 educators, both men and women in training. World Mizrachi is redefining the way Shlichim are being recruited, trained, and dispatched to communities around the world. Since the beginning of modern Zionism, diaspora Jewry supported life in Israel. It is now time for Jewish life in Israel to inspire, strengthen, and uplift our diaspora communities. World Mizrachi is leading the way. Am Yisrael, Be'eretz Yisrael, Al Pi Torat Yisrael.
Firstly, a very special thank you, forgive my South African accent, hope you can understand it, to Dr. Agustin for the very, very generous words of introduction. Indeed, it was a wonderful trip to LA, and one of the great benefits of that trip was the friendship that we've struck up, and we hope to continue to build that on many levels, Bezrat Hashem. To the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Herschel Schechter Shlita, Rav Carmel, who's joined us from Eretz Chemda, the head of Eretz Chemda, and a great partner in so much what World Mizrachi is doing. Rabbanim Chashuvim, chairman also of World Mizrachi. Nice to see Mr. Harvey Blitz. We work closely together. The incoming presidium from the national movement of Mizrachi in America, Mr. Marty Oliner from New York, Rabbi Lenny Matenki from Chicago, Dr. Ernie Agustin from LA, Ryback and all the members of the board, my good and close friend, also Rabbi Jerry Eisenberg. We work so closely together from Chicago. And also indeed, to all members of the National Board, and a very specific welcome to my friend and colleague, Rabbi Gideon Shlush. Wonderful to have a young, energetic, successful young man. Young, we're calling ourselves young, we're the same age. And it's all relative, I suppose, who is just coming to the position of building the infrastructure of an executive director and an office to Bezrat Hashem. All of us work together, L'Hagdil Torah V'Tzionu L'Hadiram, and in the few months we've worked together, I think we've also struck up a friendship and a wonderful working relationship. May we all continue Bezrat Hashem in the spirit, please God. I want to speak briefly today. It's an honor for me to speak before Rav Herschel Schechter, and therefore I really have to keep it very brief to hear the Rosh Hashiva and other wonderful speakers today. But I wanted to talk about something which I think, to my mind, goes to the heart and the essence of what Mizrachi is all about. I often reflect on the fact that there are only two things in the entire Torah which the Torah defines as a morasha, an inheritance, an active inheritance for the Jewish people. Only two things as we know. Torah tzivalanu Moshe, morasha kilat Yaakov. The Torah is our morasha that we are requested to hand over from generation to generation. Only one other thing is called a morasha. And what is it? Of course, Eretz Yisrael. Vayiveitu etchem el haaretz, it says in Parashat Va'era, Latet ota, laset itadi latet ota, the land of Israel, morasha ani Hashem. This land is a morasha. And amazingly, says the Torah Tmima, the only two things that are called a morasha are the land of Israel and Eretz Yisrael and the Torah. And these are not only a yerusha, which you inherit passively. You have to be morish otam from generation to generation. And that is the great opportunity, that the only two things that every Jew and Jewess truly owns in this world is a chelek in Torah and a chelek in Eretz Yisrael. We have our daled amot in halacha, each and every Jew, and our daled amot in Torah. But these two can be seen as two different morashot. One can see the morasha of Eretz Yisrael through the secular prism and see Medinat Yisrael through its many secular trappings as a secular morasha which is distant from Torah. And one can see the Torah, the daled amot of halacha, as distant from Eretz Yisrael and the central place that it plays in Jewish life. I think the essence of the Mizrachi role is to show that these two morashot indeed are one. They're part of one Weltanschauung, one tapestry, one worldview, where these two have to interplay with each other and uplift the other. I want to be brief, but we all know we could speak volumes that in this generation, post the Shoah, the two great stories, narratives of Jewish history, has been the reinvigoration against all odds of Torah and the reinvigoration against all odds of Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael. We could speak volumes how today the Mir Yeshiva in Israel, the Lakewood Yeshiva, Yeshiva University, but the Mir Yeshiva alone in Israel has more students than all of European literature learning at the time. The Yeshivot Hesder, 74 Yeshivot Hesder, which we could name so many of the famous ones. The Kol Torah, both in Eretz Yisrael and in this incredible country, is unimaginable. Who could ever have prophesied such a thing 70 years ago? And if the resurgence of Torah is epic and defies logic, all of us know the resurgence of the other Yud Morasha, Eretz Yisrael, through the foundation of Zionism and Medinat Yisrael, is equally, if not more impressive. The story, the main miracle which signifies this, as we know, Tekab Shofar Gadol Cherutein is Kibbutz Galuyot. It is incredible to ponder. I heard this fact a while ago, and I just want to share it with you briefly. That in the year 1840, there were 6,000 Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. By the Balfour Declaration in 1917, there were 60,000. By the foundation of the State of Israel, 600,000. And today, barely 70 years later, over 6 million. Dr. Anita Shapiro says, Professor Shapiro, one of the great historians in Israel, and of course, demographers are often wrong, and it's so difficult to predict the future. But based on all the different indicators and yardsticks that are used, many predict that by 2050, there will be another 6 million, 12 million living in Eretz Yisrael. Of course, only Korah Dorot Mirosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows, but this is a trend. You have to pinch yourself. That Tekab Shofar Gadol Cherutein and all the Nevuot that we have, so many of them speak on Kibbutz Galuyot. This alone is one of the most remarkable miracles. It only actually dawned on me this last Kiddush HaChodesh, Birkat HaChodesh last week. You know, there are so many prophecies that speak about Kibbutz Galuyot, but I don't know how I didn't see it in this light before. I was listening to Misha Nisim, that we daven for every time of Kiddush HaChodesh, of the resurgence of the moon, and we say, words we all know, but I don't know how I didn't see it with this clarity. Misha Nisim La'avoteinu, V'ga'al otanu me'avdut l'cherut. Hashem has shown how He can redeem us. Hu yigal otanu b'karov, and how will He do that? V'kabeitz nidachenu me'arba kanfot haaretz. That is the sign of the future Geulah, when people come from all over the world, as has been done over the last 150 years, and especially since the founding of Israel. Chaverim kol Yisrael v'nomar amen. That is the siman that we daven for when we see the moon and the resurgence of the moon. The light in the darkness is what we daven for every single month. And we could talk volumes about the fact, today there's between 25,000 and 30,000 Olim every year from the most unlikely places. We could speak, if we had time, of not only the resurgence of the Jewish people in the return to the land, but the miracle of the resurgence of the Hebrew language, taking something the equivalent of Latin, only studied in places of institutions of learning, making Latin of the day, Hebrew, a spoken language of millions of people, defies logic. We could speak of the resurgence of the land reclamation. There's a person I'd never heard of before until I came across a book of his. You may have heard of Mr. Loudermilk, Clay Loudermilk. I'd never heard of this person before. Wrote a book about the Promised Land. He was an American agronomist who came to Israel in the 40s. And he wrote a book about the miracle of land reclamation. He says he'd never seen something like this. He became an ardent Zionist. He built with Israel the national water carrier. And he writes, as a non-Jew, he says, I could not ever believe that this backwater of the Turkish Empire, the land could be reclaimed to produce so much it defies logic. And he became an ardent Zionist, a book he wrote in 1944 about the Promised Land. We could go on and on and on. And unfortunately, so often, the return to Eretz Yisrael by many is only seen through sort of secular terms. It's sort of outside our Torah Weltanschauung. And yet, and the Torah can be seen in its Daled Amot, separate from this incredible and epic story of Jewish destiny. And at the end of the day, Mizrachi, I think, is about synergy, about bringing these two marashot together and showing they are one. Indeed, when the Mizrachi movement was founded in the early 1900s, many of the religious Jews felt that they could not partner with secular Zionism, and it was understandable, certainly at the time, it was understandable. But the Mizrachi movement, I don't know if everyone knows this, but the word Mizrachi stands for an acronym for two words, Merkaz Ruchani. Merkaz Ruchani Rachi, Mizrachi. They saw the founders of Mizrachi to be a spiritual center, a gesher, a bridge between the nascent secular Zionist movement, which if we would not get involved in it, Taka would have only been a secular movement, and somehow to bring the spirit of Torah to its core, to show that the Morashah of Torah and the Morashah of Eretz Yisrael can and indeed ought to work together with all the challenges that ensues. One very favorite story I love, and I'd like to tell it very briefly, I've spoken about at our Vida as well, that Dr. Burg, the political head of Mizrachi movement for a while, famous Dr. Yosef Burg, was once asked, in Israel they always try to catch you out with questions. Is it a Jewish democratic state or a democratic Jewish state, and whichever one you put first tells something about you, and then you hammered in the media for weeks afterwards that you dared pause between one or the other. So that Rabbi Dr. Berg, they tried to catch him out and said, Dr. Berg, what is more important, religious or Zionism? You are the religious Zionist leader. Which one is more important? Hoping he would say religious, of course. Oh, you see, he's not a true Zionist. If he would say Zionist, then the Torah will say, oh, he's not so frum. So Dr. Berg thought for a minute and he said, what is most important in the equation, religious Zionism? He said, the hyphen, the dash which joins the two. Of course, the Torah is the most important thing. But the Torah connected to life, to Eretz Yisrael, to our understanding of history, it's one and the same. And therefore the hyphen which joins the sacred and the secular, the ancient and the modern, the religious and the Zionist, the universal and the particular are somehow joined together in Torat Chaim, in one incredible synergy. And everything the religious Zionist movement stands for is this dash, this expression of synergy. And we could speak volumes about that, but the time is short. Everything in Israel, in this movement, about joining the army and the yeshiva through Yeshivot Hester and the Mechinot, and Torah Umada, and civil service along with Torah learning, and so many more examples that could be cited here today. In the video that we showed, by the way, the partners, there's so many more partners that World Mizrachi has, World Amit and Emunah and so many others. The specific partners that we highlight in that video were those who are working with us to send shlichim, Rabbanim and Mechanchim to Chutz. We've galvanized a group of affiliated religious Zionist movement whose single-minded focus is to send shlichim, imbued with this dash of Torah and Eretz Yisrael to communities around the world. My friend Steve Flato, our vice president of our board, brought me here from New Jersey. I was in New Jersey for Shabbat, and in the car I got a call from one of our graduates of our Shalhevet program, who's currently in Maryland University. He phoned Rabbi Perez, I heard you are in New York. Please come down to Maryland. There's two of them working with the OU JLRC. I want to acknowledge Rabbi Haber, just seen the head of the OU JLRC program. 3 of our Shalhevet graduates this year are working in OU JLRC campuses and many others around the world. The 25 students studying that we spoke about is now 35, even though there are 7 couples which have gone out from our Shalhevet and Manigut Torah program that we run in conjunction based at the wonderful Eretz Chemda. But there are now 35 studying, and we could go on. But really the essence of that video was to say, to sum it up, I'd love to sum it up the way Naftali Bennett said this. He said this line, and it stuck with me. He said, for 70 years, the state of Israel has been the project of the Jewish people. Perhaps it's time for the Jewish people to be the project of the state of Israel. And we agree. We are sitting in Israel not pointing fingers at people, whether they have or haven't made aliyah. No one can be the judge of anybody else. We judge everybody favorably. Everybody has to do their own cheshbon. Our job is not to point fingers at people not living in Israel. Our job is to be responsible to provide religious Zionist services of Achenu Kol Beit Yisrael. How can we deepen that connection? How can we take responsibility within Israel to do shlichut, not only to the just under half of world Jewry living in Zion, which so much of the years of the Mizrachi movement has been spent building up Zion. We now need to not only continue building up Zion, but bring Ki mitzion tetzei, the spirit of Tzionut Datit, the love of these two morashot in the most profound way, from schools to universities, to yeshivot, to shuls. That is what we are committed to do. Re-energizing our branches, as Rabbi Shlush said so beautifully, to take national responsibility to ensure that religious Zionism is as relevant, as broadly as it can possibly be. I have to just tell you, before I make an appeal to end off regarding Yom Yerushalayim, one other story. I happened to be in Teaneck for Shabbat. It was a beautiful Shabbat. I was privileged to speak at a number of the wonderful communities and shuls there. And I get a call from our president of Mizrachi Canada. He says to me, Doron, Rabbi Perez, he says, you don't understand what has just taken place in Canada. Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, the chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, who, by the way, has accepted the presidency of Mizrachi United Kingdom. It's not a simple thing for a chief rabbi to take on the presidency of one organization, and he's become the president of Mizrachi UK. Amazing things happening in the UK. But in Canada, he came as the guest of Mizrachi. They took him to so many Jewish communities, Toronto, far beyond, Montreal, Ottawa, and others. He spoke in the House of Commons and got a standing ovation in the House of Commons. He spoke in the Ottawa Jewish community. 500 people came. I don't even know if there are 500 Jews in Ottawa. 2 imams came, the Bishop of Ottawa came, and other people came. And he said, This has inspired us at Mizrachi. Communities from all over Canada are now asking us, can you provide more services in the spirit of a deep kesher to Torah and to Eretz Yisrael? And things are also being reinvigorated there in the most profound way. And I want to end with a call to action. Dr. Agustin said so beautifully, and Rabbi Shlush before, this is a year unlike any other in Jewish history. It is the 50th Jubilee, the 50th year celebration of a united Yerushalayim, with all the challenges that the Jewish people in Yerushalayim face. So if Kibbutz Galiot happened, and the physical people, the Jewish people, aroused the dry bones in 1948 and brought salvation to the Jewish people, it is in 1967, 50 years ago this year, where Rav Goren stood at the Kotel and said, not l'shana haba Yerushalayim, not on the abstract declarations of expectation on Motzei Yom Kippur and the Pesach Seder, not l'shana haba, he said, l'shana hazot Yerushalayim. Somehow we stand at the Kotel in a way that our parents and grandparents for generations could only dream of it and never know if they would see it in their generation. Somehow we return, and all of us know. Many of you were alive during that time and remember the incredible experiences of that in the most unexpected way. But I saw recently Rabbi Natan Sharansky writing in Fear No Evil. He said the return to the Jewish people against impossible odds to Yerushalayim, he said, gave me the strength and conviction, the spiritual strength to stand up. He said, we've been 50 years under Russian, the Russian Revolution and the Iron Curtain. It was 1967, 50 years after 1967. He said, but maybe we can break it. And he took his Tanakh and his Siddur and he refused to do what he was told to do. And he said, if this tiny little people can stand up to its enemies in the world, then us tiny young Jews will have the spirit through our connection to Yiddishkeit to do the same. And indeed, over time, brought the walls of Jewish apathy and opposition to Jewish identity crumbling. It was the spirit. If the body of the Jewish people was reinvigorated in 1948, its soul, its connection to heaven, Yerushalayim, its collective soul was reinvigorated. I've seen many works of historians who have written that the whole Baal Tshuva revolution throughout the world took place as a result of the events of 1967. The spirit of the Jewish people was lifted. We could not see ourselves the same spiritually again. I saw an incredible article of Rabbi Yitzchak Nisim, the Sephardi chief rabbi after 1967, and he said this. He said we were in danger of there being two separate Torah centers, like Bavel and Yerushalayim. There would have been the separate center in America and a separate one in Israel, as long as Israel did not have Yerushalayim. But once Yerushalayim, the spiritual epicenter, the soul returned to the Jewish people, he said this began a process of everybody accepting, not Medinat Tel Aviv with a western part of Yerushalayim, but the spiritual core in foreign hands. But somehow at its core, the holiest place on earth, where Shechina lo zaza misham, this brought everybody together and somehow created one Jewish community with centered around the world. Please join us, I say in conclusion. Join us next year as we launch with all of our branches around the world a initiative to bring together hopefully thousands of people from hundreds of communities across the Jewish world, from within the broad spectrum of the religious Zionist world and beyond, to join us in Yerushalayim. We have a 3-day, spectacular 3 days planned. There are Rabbonim bringing full communities, doing parts before and parts after, but the 3 days from the 22nd of May to the 25th of May, with Yom Yerushalayim being Tuesday night, Wednesday, the 50th year to the day that the Kotel returned to Jewish sovereign hands for the first time since the year 70 CE. We have an incredible program planned. I was just talking to Rabbi Herschel Schechter, which we hope will join us, and I hope to finalize that with you, Rabbi Schechter. This week I'll come to Yeshiva University to ensure that the Rosh Yeshiva will join us and be in Israel with us and so many other wonderful people. And please join us. You can see the details. I'm going to end with just under a 2-minute DVD. One of our global ambassadors who's joining, especially for this, is Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He's writing books at the moment. It's not so easy to get him to commit to things outside of his writing. He has agreed to come on as our global ambassador, one of them, to join us in Yerushalayim. And there'll be more details through all of our branches at mizrachi.org/YY50. And I would like to end with this 2-minute DVD. Rabbi Sachs, one of many of our great leaders, inviting all of you to join us in Yerushalayim, to make sure that the flame of religious Zionism from all across the globe comes together to celebrate together, to reinvigorate our movement for the 50 years ahead.
Friends, I'd like to invite you to join me in a mission that I think will be one of the great moments of your life and mine. To come together in Jerusalem for Yom Yerushalayim as part of Mizrachi World Movement's mission to bring as many Jews from across the world to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the reuniting and rebuilding of Jerusalem, one of the great events not only in our time but in all of Jewish history. Friends, you know, there is that lovely line in Psalms, Yerushalayim habnuya ke'ir shechubraya la yachdav. Jerusalem is rebuilt like a city that is compact together. And of course, that's what we see each time we visit Jerusalem today. What all that 100 generations of our ancestors prayed for, but never really thought they would live to see, and we have lived to see it. That line in Psalms has a special meaning. On those words, Ke'ir shechubra la yachdav, a city that is bound closely together, the 3rd century Amora Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said it means Yerushalayim is Ir she'oseh kol Yisrael chaverim. It is the city that turns all Jews into friends. So let us do that. Let us do an aliyah l'regel. Let us come together from every Jewish community in the world and join together as friends, celebrating the most glorious city in all of religious history, the city that we wept for and now we rejoice for. Let's come together and celebrate with World Mizrachi. Please be there. I'll be there. And I think we will have a celebration that we will never forget.